All right, please work this time. My video just crashed on my first take, so hopefully everything goes well and I'm losing sunlight. So anyway, hi, you don't need to know that. Welcome to week 26 of our Chronological Bible Reading Plan. We are officially over halfway, so congratulations. But before we get into our narrative or I explain what we're reading about this week, I want to do what I did last week a little bit and take a step back. Big breath, Chad. Take a step back and remind us of the big picture that we've seen so far. Remember, one of the main things of these tutorials is not to give you devotional stuff to read and reflect upon. My main point in these Bible tutorials is to remind you of the big picture, because that's what we're looking at, how the story of Genesis to Revelation all fits in together, to step back and have a big look. All right, so here we go. The book of Genesis started with the man Adam and showed his link to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons, but when he dies, 12 sons, but when he dies, he doubles Joseph's inheritance between Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So officially, he divides his inheritance into 13 parts. So we now have the 13 tribes of Israel. When they go into the promised land, 12 of those tribes are given land, each tribal lands. But Levi is spread among the tribes. So we often talk about the 12 tribes of Israel. It's often confusing, He had 12 sons, so there's 12 tribes. Well, yes and no, all right? He had 12 sons, and there are 12 tribal lands, but there are always 13 tribes. And the reason I say that is because this week, that nation that became a kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon now becomes two split kingdoms with 10 tribes in the north and 3 tribes in the south. The 3 tribes down south are Judah, where David's from, little baby brother Benjamin, and the Levites, because the Levites are persecuted in the north and they flee, basically like refugees, and find their home in Judah and Jerusalem where the temple is, all right? We must understand that the kingdom of Israel is now 2 separate kingdoms, north, south, Israel and Judah. If you don't understand that, you're going to get very lost this week, because this week, particularly in the book of Kings, we begin the back and forth narrative, reading about north and then reading about the south, reading about the north and then reading about the south, all right? So you really need to have that in your mind. The book of Chronicles mainly focuses on the south. About 95% of Chronicles is about the southern kingdom and David's family. It doesn't really care about the north, but particularly the book of Kings and the prophets, we need to have that in our mind, all right? So that's just a friendly reminder of where we're at. This week we're also reading Obadiah and a couple of Psalms. So let's have a look at something about the narrative that we're going to be reading this week. Both north and south, this week we're going to be reading about their first 7 kings since the split. Up north, we've got Jeroboam, who takes us all the way to Ahab. All right, he's one of the worst. All right, he marries Jezebel, and it's basically all bad. In fact, up north, all of the kings are bad. All of them. They're all terrible, all right? They're evil. They lead God's people into sin. They violate the covenant. They kill the prophets. They chase away the Levites and the priests, and they build altars to false gods, all right? The kings in the north are really bad. Prophets come along, as prophets do, and rebuke them. We're going to see Elijah and Elisha. He's also mentioned this week. And we're also going to read about a guy called Micaiah, who's a minor prophet. You may not have heard of him before. I mention him only because he has a pretty significant vision that some people believe is significant anyway, where he sees all the spirits, ruling spirits, sitting around basically a table with God, and God speaking with them. Some people call this the divine council, like the Knights of the Round Table, where God, with the capital G, Yahweh, and all the little gods are sitting around having a discussion together, all right? You can read about that and make of it what you will. But basically, in the north, they're all bad kings, all right? Down south, we're also reading about the first 7 kings. We've got Rehoboam from Solomon, and goes all the way to a young guy, 7 years old, called Joash, where we finished this week. Down south, they have good kings, though. Not all. Some of them are bad. In fact, at one period of time for 7 years, a queen mother takes over the throne and kills the rest of her family, all right, because she wants the throne. It's like this wicked queen mother figure. Fortunately, one of her grandsons is is protected as a baby, hidden away in the temple for 7 years, and then ultimately he's anointed as king 7 years of age and they kill the queen mother. So it's a bit like that. But anyway, down south, they've got some good kings and some bad kings. And of course, because they're under the Mosaic covenant, where God says, if you obey, I'll bless you, but if you disobey, I'll curse you, the southern kingdom has a real up and down history, all right? When they have a good king, God blesses them. When they have a bad king, things go bad really fast. And that's where we end this week, with things gone pretty bad for God's people in the south, with a hint of hope. But what we also see that happens in both kingdoms, when things are going bad, one of the things that happens is that God allows them to be attacked by foreign nations. In the north, they're attacked from the north by a group called Aram, and in the south, they're attacked by their own crazy cousins, the people of Edom, which are very significant when we read the book of Obadiah. But before I mention that, I want to say this. I want to encourage you this week, go to Google or open a study Bible like me if you have one of those, and get two things, all right? This is going to help you. Get two things. Get a chart of the names of the kings, where you can see the northern kings and the southern kings and their names. That's going to help you. And what you're going to find there is that some of the names of the kings are the same. Not the same person, but the same name. And I think if you had that chart, it will help you not be as confused as you read through the stories. Okay, so that's the first thing I think might be helpful for you. The second thing that will be helpful is to get a map, so that you can remind yourself of Israel in the north, Judah in the south, and you can see some of the foreign nations, okay, that are mentioned in these stories. Because as you read, there's a couple of wars that take place this week, and you're not going to really understand them, or you're going to understand them better if you download a map that is relevant to that time in history. And as I said, most study Bibles will have that, so I'm going to leave that with you, but it helped me this week in the readings. Point is this. At one of the points in history where Judah is going through a bad time, they come under attack by nations in the south, and the nation of Edom, which is down south, don't help them. All right? They, in fact, look upon their attack and do so with a bit of animosity in their hearts. They don't like Judah, and they're kind of happy that they're being attacked. Now, how do we know this? We know this thanks to the prophet Obadiah. Obadiah prophesies not to God's people, but he prophesies to the people of Edom. Now, Edom are distant cousins of God's people, okay? You remember Genesis, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Well, Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Esau was the hairy guy, okay? Esau's people became the people of Edom. So even though they're not in covenant with God, they weren't with Moses at Mount Sinai, they are still nevertheless the distant cousins of God's people, and Obadiah comes to them and rebukes them for not looking after their cousins, okay? For not looking after Judah when they were under attack by foreign armies. Now, trying to place this in history, there's a bit of debate about that. The reason we're reading it this week is because one of the theories is that it is in 2 Chronicles 21, where there's an attack that takes place and the Edomites don't do anything about it. Some people think, well, it could have been in that part of history that Obadiah prophesies. In fact, this week, you will see two characters called Obadiah. All right, one in the north and one in the south. Two different prophets called Obadiah. It could have been one of them. We don't know. Obadiah is a really common name. There are lots of them in the Bible, all right? So we're not really sure who it is, but it's possible it took place this week. And essentially, this introduces us for the first time to the idea of the prophetic books coming into the narrative. And it's good that we start with Obadiah because it's the shortest one. All right, it's the quickest book, 21 verses. It's the shortest book in the whole Old Testament, in fact. So Obadiah comes in and prophesies during the narrative of Kings and Chronicles. Anyway, so there you go. So some of you may have never read Obadiah before. This may be a first to you. Enjoy it. What we do know is that whenever it happened in history, maybe this week, maybe not, we're not sure. Whenever it happened in history, we do know that Jeremiah quotes Obadiah at length in chapter 49 of Jeremiah, okay, which is quite interesting. Anyway, enjoy that this week. You've also got a couple of Psalms to read, which I won't explain why now, and I hope this video works. Bless you guys. Have an awesome weekend. If you're local, remember to get out to vote on Saturday for the election. Bless you, and I'll see you next week. I've got a little bit of sunlight left.